Lately, as the Supreme Court continues to be engulfed in a never-ending series of ethical crises and a more problematic collapse in public confidence, we have learned that Chief Justice John Roberts and Justices Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito don't care. Even worse, they refuse to do anything about it. While they reject appeals from Congress to come in and address the American people's concerns at public hearings, where we can all hear their explanations for all that we've learned, Thomas and Alito are fine with talking with rich Republican donors at, like, shushy resorts. And Alito and Roberts apparently are A-OK chatting with a perfect stranger at a Supreme Court Historical Society party.
As a Catholic and as someone who, like, really cherishes my faith, I don't know that we can negotiate with the left in the way that, like, needs to happen for the polarization to end. I think that it's a matter of, like, winning.
I think you're probably right. I think one side or the other is going to win. I don't know. I mean, there can be a way of working, a way of living together peacefully, but it's difficult, because there are differences on fundamental things that really can't be compromised. Really can't be compromised. So it's not like we're going to split the difference.
And that's what I'm saying. I think that the solution really is, like, winning the moral argument. Like, people in this country who believe in God have got to keep fighting for that, to return our country to a place of godliness.
Oh, I agree with you.
That was Justice Alito sharing his religious fervor with the stranger who turned out to be progressive activist and documentarian Lauren Windsor, who is known for approaching high-level conservative figures, pretending to be an ally, and recording them making candid comments. Whoops. Joining me now is Ian Millhiser, senior correspondent for Vox. I'm a big fan of your work. Thank you for being here. I think there is a certain sense of learned helplessness that we have developed on the media side and maybe on the political side when it comes to the Supreme Court, because the answer is always there's nothing we can do. Is there something we can do?
I mean, I guess my answer is sort of.
Yeah.
The problem is that Democrats don't control the House. And so all they can do is theater. And on the one hand, like holding a hearing, getting up, giving big speeches,
yes.
All of that is great to shine a light on it.
Yes.
On the other hand, here we are on a big national news network, and we're talking about this story.
Yeah.
So, like, people are noticing it. It's happening. And so, I don't know what the skeleton key is for Democrats to fix this. I do know they need to win the election, because the only way there could be any kind of reform of the Supreme Court is if there's a Democratic House, a Democratic Senate.
Absolutely. And also the next election, I think, increasingly is not about Joe Biden. It is literally about who gets to pick the 30-year-old version of Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas, because they will retire the day after the inauguration. It is clear, because they want to go and have vacations all the time instead of all part of the time. Here's the thing. You've had Dick Durbin, who is the Senate, the leader of the Senate Judiciary Committee, the chair of it, invite Justice Roberts to come down and do hearings. Roberts said, I don't have to do that.
Right.
No. He's asked Samuel Alito, come down. Alito says, I don't have to do that. I don't have to do that. Yeah. Nobody requires me to do it, and I won't do it. So now they're having a press conference tomorrow where they're going to request unanimous consent on this resolution for this bill called the Supreme Court Ethics, Recusal, and Transparency Act. It won't pass the House.
It will not. And it won't pass the Senate either, because, they won't get unanimous consent. And it will be filibustered anyway.
Correct.
Right.
So the only option to me is hearings. And there have been there are people named like Noah Berlasky and others who are like, do hearings anyway in the Senate where you can. Let me play you a mash of hearings and how effective they are. Here's some hearings.
Have you no sense of decency, sir, at long last? Have you left no sense of decency?
I began by telling the president that there was a cancer growing on the presidency, and if the cancer was not removed, the president himself would be killed by it.
We want to know the truth. The statement you sent out was a statement on Benghazi, and you say vicious behavior as a response to inflammatory material on the internet. If that's not pointing as the motive of being a video, I don't know what is.
You feel like you're doing a great job, right? Is that what you're saying?
We're doing our level best in a very...
What does that mean? What does that mean when a child is sitting in their own feces, can't take a shower? Come on, man. What's that about? None of us would have our children in that position.
Now I'm going to give you the best free legal advice you're ever getting in your life. Get a great effing criminal defense lawyer. You're going to need it.
Obviously, the McCarthy hearings exposed Senator McCarthy and destroyed his power. The Watergate hearings resulted in the president's resignation. You could go on. Benghazi hearings showed that lady can do 12 hours with her head in her hands and look like a boss. You had the hearings about the caged children, Elijah Cummings, one of the greats of all time. And the January 6 hearings resulted in prosecutions. It was hearings that caused the Michael Cohen revelations that led to prosecutions of Donald Trump. Should the Senate hold these hearings? Dick Durbin.
So what I think the Senate needs is, you need to do effective theater. Yeah. And one of the things that I think is a huge problem for Durbin or anyone who's trying to stage that theater is that when you go after the courts can strike down your subpoenas. They can strike down, Remember a while back when they tried to subpoena Leonard Leo, the head of the Federalist Society, because he might be involved in some of this.
All those guys as boss.
Yeah, nothing ever came of that. And the reason why is because they try to enforce the subpoena. Half the judges and most of the judges of the Supreme Court owe their job to Leonard Leo.
Right.
So they're not going to let people go after him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're dealing with, I don't know if corruption is the right word, but we're dealing with a virus that is embedded so deep in our government when you have a partisan judiciary in the way that we do. And again, if there is theater that can help people understand, we need a Congress, we need a White House that's gonna get rid of this virus.
Yeah.
We need to do it. But ultimately, everything comes down to this election.
Everything comes down to this election, and the election is in many ways about the courts. Ian Millhiser, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. But we begin tonight with Justice for All, an ideal enshrined in the motto on the Department of Justice seal, Qui pro domina justitia sequitur, in Latin, or roughly, he who takes legal action on behalf of Lady Justice. The phrase expresses the ideal of a system of justice in which every American is equal before the law. But if you ask MAGA Republicans, that entire system, state and federal, has been weaponized entirely against one man.
Last week's verdict in New York shows how corrupt, rigged, and un-American the weaponized justice system has become under Joe Biden and Democrats.
It's impossible for anybody to deny that looks at this objectively, that the judicial system in our country has been weaponized against President Trump.
This is a justice system that hunts Republicans while protecting Democrats. This was certainly a hoax, a sham.
The conspiracy calls have become so loud and repetitive that Attorney General Merrick Garland felt the need to speak out today and rebuke the resulting threats against the DOJ and the public servants who serve there. In a Washington Post op-ed, Garland wrote, "These heinous threats of violence have become routine in an environment in which the Justice Department is under attack like never before." Garland specifically mentioned attacks on the special counsel's prosecution of Donald Trump. Now, he could easily have included the state prosecutors, judges, and anyone else involved in any way in holding Donald Trump accountable for his alleged crimes, as well as their families, who've also faced vicious threats from MAGA fans. But that's not in Merrick Garland's purview, because he doesn't supervise state prosecutions, only federal ones. Look it up. It's in the Constitution. So in defense of those federal prosecutors, he added, "We will not be intimidated by these attacks. But it is absurd and dangerous that public servants, many of whom risk their lives every day, are being threatened for simply doing their jobs and adhering to the principles that have long guided the Justice Department's work." And speaking of that work, all of this is taking place as a jury today found Hunter Biden guilty on all counts in his federal trial, tied to his purchase and possession of a gun while using drugs. Like Trump, he faces potential jail time. So let's take a moment to unpack how ironic this is, given all the huffing and puffing from the right. Irony number one involves taking a look at how different the trials of Donald Trump in New York and Hunter Biden in Delaware played out, and who was present for them. Hunter Biden was surrounded at his federal trial by loved ones, including his mom, First Lady Jill Biden. During his trial, she was there nearly every day, showing him love and support. Trump, during his state trial, was mainly surrounded by his federal political surrogates, who even cosplayed in their best Trump look-alike outfits outside the courthouse while launching the vicious attacks that Trump was barred by a gag order from hurling at the judge, his daughter, and the jury. Melania never showed. And the 2 times Trump's sons, Don Jr. and Eric, showed up. They used their rare appearances to join in the attacks. The right praised those attacks, thought they were awesome. Now take a look at how they portrayed the First Lady showing support for her son.
What message is the White House sending having Jill Biden walk into the courtroom? This is the First Lady of the United States.
Typically, if someone sits there during jury selection, it's because, you know, they're sending a message. They want the jurors to look at you to say, like, look, here we are. You know, this is a big deal.
You've got Jill Biden at the trial, but she wasn't just at the trial. She was at the selection of the jury. And I can't help but think that she was there trying to send a message. I'm here. She's got her arms around the family members. And then you've got kind of the mob mentality. We know who you are. We're in the courtroom and we're watching you.
Yeah, so scary having his mom there. Irony number 2 is that Hunter's case revolves around gun possession. Now, let's not forget that the right doesn't believe in any restrictions on gun ownership. Republicans around the country are looking to arm teachers. They have authorized guns to be brought into mental institutions in Texas. And they want people as young as 18 to be allowed to handle AR-15s, even though those are the weapons of choice for mass shooters. Even as we speak, we are awaiting a decision by the Supreme Court that could allow domestic abusers to have access to firearms. But in this case, the silence from the gun-worshiping right defending Hunter's right to bear arms for a gun he had in his possession for all of 11 days is deafening. And irony number 3, I think, is the biggest one. The right says the DOJ is weaponized against Trump. That's kind of hard to see given today's verdict. In fact, it shows that the Justice Department has no problem prosecuting the son of a sitting president. In fact, one could argue Hunter Biden is being treated worse than your average citizen, given how rare a charge like this is. This also marks the first time an immediate family member of a president has been found guilty of a crime during his time in office. We should also note the speed of this case. Unlike Trump, there were no long delays. Hunter Biden could do nothing to stop this trial from moving forward, nor his next one for failing to pay $1 million in taxes that he's already repaid. And the reality is that Hunter Biden is likely going to face the full gamut of consequences for being a felon, including trouble getting a passport, challenges in getting loans, needing to check that felon box when filling out a job application, none of which will likely happen to felon Donald Trump, who, unlike Hunter, is wrapped in the protective cloak of a former president and presidential nominee, and who also happens to lead an upside-down American flag cult that includes members in Congress and apparently even on the highest court in the land. Joining me now is Congressman Jared Moskowitz of Florida, former Republican Congressman Denver Riggleman, who served as a senior advisor to the January 6th Select Committee, and Paul Butler, former federal prosecutor and MSNBC legal analyst. I'm going to thank the member and former member of Congress and turn first to my friend here at the table, Paul Butler. Did I get anything wrong about Hunter Biden's prospects? Because he, like Donald Trump, is now a former felon.
That's exactly right. The president has made it clear that his son will have to follow all of the rules and procedures of everyone else who's convicted of a felony, unlike Donald Trump. Again, Donald Trump was convicted in a state system, not a federal system. But apparently, when he went for his interview with the probation officer, he wasn't required to take a drug test, which is required of everybody who's convicted of a crime in New York who's subject to probation. So different treatment for Donald Trump. The president's son, Hunter Biden, not being treated the same as everyone else, in many ways being treated worse. This crime that he's convicted of rarely prosecuted unless the gun was used for a violent crime. In this case, it wasn't. Yeah. He had it for 11 days. 10 out of those days, it was in a locked box. It was never loaded. Again, the reason that Hunter Biden is being prosecuted is because he's the son of the president.
I think that's clear, Jared Moskowitz, Congressman Moskowitz. It feels like the Justice Department and the Attorney General went out of their way to get out of the way of this prosecution, which was brought by a holdover from the Trump DOJ. And, you know, the president said he won't touch it. He said he's not going to pardon his son. And it seems that Merrick Garland let it go through. How can the Justice Department be weaponized against Trump when all of that is happening?
No, that's right, Joy. First, thanks for having me. No, we had a Republican prosecutor that was handling this case, right? This had nothing to do with Merrick Garland or Joe Biden. In fact, he's been found guilty, right? I mean, the idea that you now see my colleagues across the aisle trying to say this is all part of the plan, I mean, just sounds ridiculous. But there is something that did, or I should say did not happen, Joy, in this case. You didn't see members of Congress going to the courthouse, standing with Hunter, you know, in their Men's Warehouse suits, holding press conferences. No Democrat is called to defund the FBI or defund the DOJ. No Democrat is calling for civil war as a result. No, Democrats stand for the rule of law. Remember, law and order. You know, and we've been saying that Trump's not above the law, Hunter Biden's not above the law, no one is above the law. And it is amazing to see the stark contrast between how Democrats handled today and how Republicans handled this whole thing over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the ugliness of it, the threats against even the jurors, trying to dox the jurors. It's a very different tone, Denver Riggleman. The other thing that I feel like is missing, and this is something that we've talked a little bit about on this show, and I think you're an especially important person to talk about it with, is just the lack of sort of decency on the Republican side here. Because you have, in the case of Hunter Biden, somebody who's obviously had deep troubles, problems with drugs, problems in his life. He comes from a background that's full of tragedy. And yet here's his family surrounding him with love. President Biden's statement is actually quite kind, and it's very fatherly and sweet. He says, as I said last week, I'm the president, but I'm also a dad. Jill and I love our son, and we are so proud of the man he is today. So many families who have loved ones battle addiction understand the feeling of pride, seeing someone you love come out on the other side and be so strong and resilient in recovery. As I said last week, I will accept the outcome of this case and will continue to respect the judicial process as Hunter considers an appeal. Jill and I will always be there for Hunter and the rest of our family with our love and support. Nothing will ever change that. I can't even imagine Donald Trump saying that about any of his children, his family. That is actually loving your kid. And I don't understand why Republicans don't even have compassion for that.
I don't either. And I think what's so damaging about it is that the first thing is that they have the conspiracy theories coming out. Jared already talked about it, right? And, you know, Jared's going to probably be horrified by this, but I do shop at Men's Warehouse sometimes. And the other thing, too, about this that's sort of nuts, right, is the awfulness about addiction. You know, I was in Congress when I lost my cousin 2 blocks away to an overdose. I've had 2 very close family members die, you know, transient drug use. But also doing some, you know, just some awful things, you know, when it comes to drugs. And I remember, you know, if you're there watching somebody die, or you're there and you get the phone call that somebody dies from addiction, that is absolutely brutal. And the fact that people are treating Hunter like this, I think, really speaks to what the far right is doing. But the other thing that's even just as bad is this conspiracy theories coming out. And I think Jared actually alluded to it, that the guilty trial or the guilty verdict for Hunter was actually a fig leaf to actually cover up the real crimes of Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, which is on its face completely ludicrous. And by the way, Joy, I don't know if you know this, you're part of the corporate globalist media that's actually coordinating with the Biden campaign. I'm just letting you know what's happening out there. Yeah. That you're like, that Joe Biden's the embodiment of the rule of law. No, he's actually, this is a conspiracy, and the Hunter Biden guilty verdict was actually part of the plan all along. This is insane. It's just incredible that we're going through this right now in our American system.